All right, welcome to Chapter 5 of our course on First Principles Thinking. Today, we are going to tackle one of the most exciting, most powerful concepts in all of innovation, how to rebuild ideas right from the ground up. Honestly, this chapter is a perfect taste of the kind of in-depth courses you can find over at the beventured.com Academy. So let's jump right in.
So let me just start with this, a pretty huge question. How do the world's greatest innovators, the Elon Musks of the world, or even thinkers way back like Aristotle, how do they solve problems that everyone else just thinks are impossible? What's their secret sauce?
Well, the answer, it's actually incredibly simple, but it's also really profound. See, they don't just improve on what's already there. They don't just slap a new coat of paint on an old idea. No way. They completely rebuild it from its absolute foundation.
Okay, so let's get into the how. The tool they use for this kind of radical rebuilding, it's called First Principles Thinking. And it's all about understanding that sometimes you have to tear something down completely before you can build something truly new.
So, what is it exactly? Well, think of first principles thinking as kind of like reverse engineering a problem. Instead of starting with what everyone thinks they know, you break it all the way down. You keep asking why until you're left with nothing but the most basic fundamental truths, the things you know for sure are true. And from that clean slate, that's where you start building your new solution.
Now, I know this might sound a little abstract, a little, out there, but there's a really clear, actionable process that you can follow. So let's break down the framework so we can all start putting it to use.
It really just boils down to these 4 steps. First, you've got to identify the assumptions that everyone just accepts without question. Then, you deconstruct the problem down to its core truths, its first principles. From there, you use those truths to reconstruct a brand new idea from scratch. And finally, and this is crucial, you test that new idea in the real world, you get feedback, and you make it better. It's a simple loop, but man, is it powerful.
Okay, theory is great, but to really see how powerful this is, let's look at a couple of real-world examples. I'm talking about game-changing ideas where this exact process completely turned entire industries on their heads.
Let's start with electric vehicles. For decades, the assumption was, okay, an electric car is basically a gas car, but you swap out the engine for a battery. That was the box everyone was thinking inside. But if you use first principles, you ask, wait, what is a car really? At its most basic level, it's just a thing that needs a source of energy, it needs to be efficient, and it has to do what the user needs it to do. That's the fundamental truth.
And what do you get when you build up from that truth? You get Tesla. They didn't just make an electric Ford. They rethought everything, the battery, the software, even the whole idea of a gas station. They built a dedicated charging network. They built the entire concept of the car from the ground up. And, well, you know the rest. They completely redefined the game.
Okay, here's another huge one, space travel. For over half a century, the assumption was that rockets are just insanely expensive. It's a given, a law of nature. But from first principles, what is a rocket? It's just a collection of materials, right? Some aluminum alloys, some carbon fiber. It's just stuff that has to obey the laws of physics.
And here's the breakthrough question that comes from that principle. If a rocket is just made of materials, why on earth do we throw it in the ocean after using it once? That's insane. So SpaceX focused on reusability. By doing that, they completely rewrote the entire economic model of spaceflight, slashing the costs and basically unlocking a whole new era of exploration.
So, we've seen the process, we've seen the incredible results. But actually applying this, it takes more than just following some steps on a slide. It really demands a fundamental shift in how you look at the world.
This quote just nails it. It really gets to the heart of the matter. To rebuild ideas, you have to be willing to question everything, especially the things that everyone knows. You have to challenge the experts. You have to risk looking a little silly. Honestly, your biggest asset in this whole process is just having an open mind.
Of course, all of this is way easier said than done. Let's be real for a second. In the real world, what actually stops us from thinking this way? What are the biggest hurdles you're probably going to face when you try to do this?
Well, the good news is, for these big, scary barriers, the solutions are actually pretty practical. You're afraid of failure? Well, you have to build a culture where it's okay to experiment and be wrong sometimes. You feel like you don't have the time? You have to literally schedule and protect time just for this kind of deep thinking. And what about that "but we've always done it this way" attitude? You fight that by bringing in people from different teams with totally different perspectives who don't share all those old baked-in assumptions.
Okay, let's start to bring this all together. We've gone through the what, the why, and the how of tearing down ideas to build something new and amazing. So now it's time to think about what's next for you.
If there's one thing you take away from this chapter, let it be this. Deconstruction is the secret path to real, true innovation. Once you master the art of breaking things down to their fundamental truths, you have armed yourself with the single most powerful tool for creating something the world has never seen before.
And hey, your journey is not over, not even close. In our very next chapter, Chapter 6, we're going to build directly on this foundation and focus completely on innovation. And to help you really lock in everything we've talked about today, make sure you check out the link in the description below. We've got quizzes, notes, and a great little infographic waiting for you. And of course, you can always explore more courses just like this one at vventure.com. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in Chapter 6.